Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody in the Daily Huddle universe. Welcome to Thursday Spiritual Matters. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and I am wearing a sweater that says, or sweatshirt that says we. The reason I am wearing a sweatshirt that says we, is because we're going to talk about us. We're going to have a family meeting here in the Daily Huddle. I know that you have seen the news and all of the conflict that has been happening, the bloodshed that has been happening in Israel. And I want to talk about what is the spiritual lesson in that conflict. For that, I have a quote from the monastic priest, I guess, in Tibetan tradition, Kelsang Gyatso. He is quoted as saying, this is a long one, so I'm going to go slow because I want you to really listen to this. Without inner peace, outer peace is impossible. We all wish for a world peace, but world peace will never be achieved until we first establish peace in your own mind. We can send so-called peacekeeping forces into areas of conflict, but peace cannot be opposed from the outside with guns. Only by creating peace within our own mind and helping others do the same can we hope to achieve peace in this world. We'll talk about it. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Matters Thursdays. Like I said, I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. Let us get centered in today's now moment. I'm going to start with you, Virtue. Where are you and what are you thankful for? Is Virtue here? I saw her name pop up. What about you, Rashida? Where are you and what are you thankful for? You're muted, dear. You're muted, dear.
I thought I heard my name, but I just heard it so far away. What was your question? I'm so sorry, Dr. Ogando.
Where are you and what are you thankful for?
I am where I supposed to be. I'm in Pennsylvania, no longer in Jamaica. And what I'm thankful for, I am thankful for life itself. One more day to my calendar. I am so grateful to be here with you, our sharing space.
Oh, very sweet. Very sweet. We are very happy that you're with us as well. Let's see, who else is here? What am I going to ask? Cece, you're here. How are you? And who are you?
Good morning. I am right here, right now, and I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you.
And who are you hugging today? She said, I don't know.
I'm gonna hug somebody today.
I love it. They stay in line. Pick a number. I'll get to your hug in a minute. I love it. So you guys, I had been cautious in speaking about things that are happening in current events from a spiritual perspective, because people are sometimes very positioned into these things. And so I want to begin this discussion by first establishing, I am the check yourself before you wreck yourself, always quoting Ice Cube, audit your assumptions, right? And so the first thing that I always like to do when we're beginning a conversation, particularly when it is so heavy with meaning for people, is to first establish our assumptions. okay? So I'm going to begin this conversation with the assumption that we all are going to be operating from the definition of we are spiritual beings having a human experience. You may or may not believe it, you may or may not agree, you may or not understand it, but for the purpose of this context, we'll operate from that assumption first, okay? Just like how you suspend your disbelief when you go into the movies and you pretend that Bambi really died instead of the reality of light photons on a white screen, okay? Like that, we're gonna use the assumption. The second assumption that we are going to be operating from is that we are a trifold being, as it were. That you are your spiritual being, yes. And that in your human experience, you have an ego and a body. Okay, call it the trinity of your human consciousness. So that's an important second assumption. And then the third assumption is that the ego's agenda is diametrically opposed to spirit's agenda. Spirit's agenda is one of integration and wholeness and unity. All is one and the universe is mental. It's one of the first universal laws. In ego, the agenda is my survival and my superiority above all else, even at your expense, even if it costs you your life. And I will do whatever it takes to protect my life so that I can survive, right? Because survival is the agenda. So given those three assumptions, when we start talking about the conflict in Israel, then I can't help but get curious about the context of it, right? Because you're already walking into an already flowing stream, right? There's an already existing conversation. There's an already existing history. And I have done some research on this in preparation for today. And I have some resources to share with you because I think this will also educate all of us. And so then the conversation is about the core issue for me, based on just what I've read and the research that I've done, et cetera. The core issue for me is, once again, the settler colony, in this case, Israel, refusing to integrate and refusing to recognize itself as the foreign entity in an indigenous environment. Europeans did it when they came to the Americas, when they came to Africa, et cetera, et cetera. There's usually a foreign entity that comes in and then takes over. You know who else does that? Viruses, cancer. And so in order for us to be able to create that peace that I quoted about earlier, we're going to have to be committed to the inner peace and demonstrate it through that outer peace, right? And so this is really the story for me of one people, not two different people, not two different cultures, not two different races, but one people rejecting itself because it looks different or because it doesn't comport with certain external factors or validation metrics or whatever the case may be. So then the question becomes, well, what's the lesson in that? Because as we can see, it has deathly repercussions. And I'm going to suggest something. I'm going to suggest that the outer world, the collective consciousness of us all, right? Because you're not individually responsible for what's happening in any part of the world. None of us are. But whatever is happening in any corner of the world that you hear about, and especially if you have an emotional reaction or opinion about it, then that is your information for you to do with your individual consciousness, right? And so sometimes the feedback has to be really loud and confrontive, and in some cases even deadly, for any of us to pay attention or for any of us to realize that, oh my God, the call is coming from inside the house. This is about me. So here are some questions for you. Where do you take over in an already existing conversation and then make another person wrong for not going along with the thing that you imposed? First question. Second question. How much abuse do you take being the martyr, being the good older brother or sister, being the responsible, faithful spouse, being the tax-paying, patriotic citizen, being whatever label you want to give yourself? How much abuse do you take before you say, you know what, F this? Or do you ever? Sometimes we just, our martyrdom is our badge of honor. Right? And then the third question. Can you, this is probably the more important question of it all, and I think I'm getting emotional just articulating. Can you show compassion for someone who does not agree with you, does not look like you, and will never look or agree like or with you? Or do you dehumanize them, other them? Sometimes we otherize people. They're not like us, in order to justify abuse, neglect, ignoring, et cetera, et cetera. Can you find compassion for another human being for no other reason than you are my brother or sister? We may not agree. We may be on opposite sides of the tennis court, as it were. But I respect your humanity and I see you for that. And that's a corollary to that question. When do we not do that? Sometimes we don't do that with homeless people that you pass down the street on your way to downtown. Sometimes we don't do that with our own children. We think our children are extensions of us, and to the extent that you're not a representation of what I like to see in myself, I reject you, I withdraw my love. Or at least give you the silence treatment for a day or two. So you see how there's like levels, right? There's, your cruelty may not rise to the level of murder, and certainly not mass murder, but perhaps your cruelty is you withdraw your love, your attention, and your respect from people when they don't agree, and that's how you manipulate them into behavior modification. So that's why I said that this is a family meeting, because we have some things to talk about in terms of what are our spiritual lessons from what we're seeing happening in the world, and not just with the Israeli conflict, but in general with the world that we live in. So I want to open that up to see what you got. How's this landing for you? Or maybe you're like, Dr. Monikah, you're full of it. Say something else, because this ain't it. I want to hear about it. Who has something to say?
Dr. Ogando.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for including we. I would tell you, you went into several points in my life right now. And why I say that is because at this moment, I'm sitting down with a group of investors. They do humanitarian project, quote unquote. And one of the things that lead me to them is an ayahuasca ceremony that I did last year. And they highly recommend me to do this humanitarian project in Costa Rica. And what lead them to not even pick me or choose me was the connection that I have with spirit and with my ancestors. And the humanitarian foresee what I see as being living a human body in a spiritual realm of being. So when you open this, for me, I always like to call it can of worm.
Mm-hmm.
How we separate ourselves, and I'm speaking for myself and for others, how we separate ourselves from that spiritual realm and the human being that
Mm-hmm.
we perceive going around driving our car or helping or not helping or ignoring what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm.
So this topic is not one topic, it's too many topics.
I know it. Yes. Yes.
So relating to it, I can relate to each one of them, but it for me it's done. Each one of them, just question that you ask have been the ego separating from the trust me, uh, you. I'm thinking that you're gonna have to do this like in several phase that everyone can understand. But
Yeah.
I got where you're going. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Who else has something?
I'll go. This
Yes.
is Laura. Thank you for this very touching, heart-wrenching conversation this morning. And what came up for me first was pain. And what I think is that, this is my opinion, is that we are at a tipping point
Mm-hmm.
where the collective pain level is so high that it is ready to spill. There's an outburst that is ready to it's like a volcano waiting to erupt.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just my personal experience or what I am feeling, even in my own body. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complete. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that too. And I quote our lovely sister Yala Vanzan. She says, "You have to feel it to heal it."
Mhm.
And many times we suppress those feelings because they're uncomfortable, because we don't know where to put them, because we don't know how to transmute them or alchemize them, because we don't want to vomit on other people, etc. And so, can you imagine feeling nauseous and wanting to vomit, but then swallowing it so that you won't bother anybody? You're damaging yourself. It's meant to be
Mm.
expelled, right? And so,
Outside. Mhm.
yeah, thank you for mentioning it. Who else has something?
There's 3 hands up. Do you want to call somebody?
Let's see. I see. Yeah, I think yours going first. Why don't you go, Giovanni?
Okay. So one of the things that was opening up for me as you were creating the conversation was um, um, I was between yesterday and the day before and this week, I've been feeling this real pain for humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
and um, and this incapacity to do something about it. It's really painful. In the context of Ukraine, in the context of Israel, in the context of the Palestine community,
Mm-hmm.
in the context, in all contexts, I feel this really incapacity to do something and really wanting to do something,
Mm-hmm.
and it sort of it's at the borderline of anger. What my experience is that people like myself who in some degree can create a space like what you're saying, can I love you even though you hate me? Can I love you even though you want to kill my family? Can I love you even though you think differently? Can I do that? Can I create that space? I am someone who can create that space.
Mm-hmm.
I can sort of look in that direction
Mm-hmm.
with a possibility, but the incapacity I have to do something, it's really upsetting for me. And that's something that I don't think I've ever voiced, but that's what I wanted to say in the context of this conversation. As this spiritual being I am.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Ronald?
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation, and we're really I think Laura hit it right. The word collective is really what's coming up for me. I mean, Giovanni went into Ukraine, Israel, and I'm basically been boiling inside with the situation on the canal in Haiti. If you guys been following that, you know, that's a third tragedy, or probably the third big I don't want to call it spectacle, but despicable situation in the world that people are trying to really get food or get their life better or change the paradigm of oppression, basically. Change the paradigm of oppression, and that's the collective rise, and that collective rise is really on the branks. I mean, this is the last drop that's gonna blow the vase. Is more information is available, more people are getting are very much conscientious. I mean, the rise of conscience is really to a maximum right now. And I guess, you know, this is where our you know, little tank here makes sense, you know, where do people have this kind of space to really spell out what we are feeling, you know, because I mean, I as an artist feel pitiful about this.
Yes.
I mean, from every aspect of it. I mean, it boils me. I mean, it boils me to look at the canal. It boils me to see 2,300 people die in Israel. Okay. I mean, it boils me. But I mean, do we have the space here to deal with it? But you know, people, I mean, in the spiritual space, you know, how does a priest or whatever, I mean, the leaders deal with it? People are doing all this. I mean, I can go on and on. It's really a tough situation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, anyway, I'll stop there.
I feel your heart on that. And Gio, I feel your heart when you're talking about that, feeling that incapacity and feeling so frustrated by it. You know, it infuriates me when I see that there are things that we can do something about and we hide it under the rug because we don't have any economic or political interest in a particular people, or our absence of action is the politically expedient thing to do, and based on our own interests as a country. And I think it is further insult to injury when that lack of action or that lack of response or that lack of humanity is then undergirded by a very edited, very curated representation of the situation through our media. So even the citizens aren't as educated and as well informed as they should be to be able to form an educated opinion about what they think about it or what they want to do about it, right? And so then that, for me, that begets the question of, well, where do I do that? Where do I ignore information or only believe what I want to believe or don't check any further and then act surprised and heartbroken when I make decisions based on lack of information that I myself didn't check or ask for or you know, question myself or challenge or be curious enough or whatever, but then I don't want to admit. I don't want to admit that I just didn't care enough to go looking. I just wanted it. I just wanted somebody to tell me what to think, what to believe, and then I can just go on like that so that I can pretend to live in comfort. And it's hard to admit that to oneself, let alone to someone else or in public, you know? And I think it behooves all of us here to contemplate, you know, in the larger scheme of things, where do I do that, or where don't I do that, or where has it been done to me? So that I can then, with my empathy and with my lived embodied experience, I can there share some strength with someone else and extend my lesson, you know? So I told you that I would give you some resources to educate yourself and to learn more about what's going on. So I have a couple of films. You know, I love movies. A couple of documentaries. One of them is called Gaza Fights for Freedom. Gaza Fights for Freedom. Somebody please put it on the chat. It's a film by Abby Martin, and she does a great job of curating firsthand accounts of, in real time, of people that are living in the Gaza Strip, that are civilians and medical professionals and citizens, et cetera. And then including the conversation about the Great March of Return. Can you imagine that you leave your house, somebody comes and squats in it and starts living in it, and then when you come back to your house, your movements are, not only are you not let back in the house, but when they open the door for you to sneak a peek into your house, then your movements are controlled and supervised, like you're the thief. What the Great March of Return is talking about. Occupation 101 is the second one. Occupation 101, the voices of the silenced majority. It talks about the impact of the occupation on Palestine's native population, but also the influential role that the United States has played, and how occupation infiltrates the economic and the social and the political lives of people growing up in Palestine, and how that implementation of those economic policies is the #1 driver deepening the divide between people who could just live together were it not for these policies. And then the third one is life in occupied Palestine. I did not know this. I just learned this from just doing some research and preparing for today's call. But there's restricted movement, land confiscation, separation barriers, encroachment on agricultural activity, cutting down sacred trees, struggle to maintain the most basic of things. It's an occupied state. And the native population can't even have access to their own food or their own water without somebody else cutting it off. So when somebody takes over your house, yeah, an open prison, exactly, Laura. So when somebody takes over your house and you're like trying to negotiate with this unreasonable occupation of your home, and then you're like, you know what, F it, I'm going in there. And then the person who stole your home happens to get injured or killed, but you're the savage. Can you see how this is nuanced? And can you see how when you hear only one side of the story, then obviously we tend to side with the side of the story that's telling the story, right? There are no villains in their own stories. And so I beg you, I beseech you, I exhort you to read more on this, to learn more about this, to see what, from a spiritual perspective, what commonalities you see from yourself with each aspect, with each player in this game, and the correspondences and parallels that we see in the African diaspora, in occupied Western territories, et cetera, because it's the same deal. And one occupier in one part of the world telling people you can't criticize the occupier on that part of the world is just peak gaslighting, if you ask me. So I know this was a heavy conversation, and I'm sending you and extending you all my love, all my hugs. We can have a family hug meeting in our meeting, and compassion for our collective global family. Whether you like your cousin or not, whether you agree with your cousin or not, whether you approve of his methods or not, or whether he hurts you or not, he's still your family. And we still, the only way to get out of the hair is together. And so I send you all my love. Remember to love generously, laugh as much as you can, sleep at least 7 to 8 hours, eat more plant-based food, stress less, move your body. Remember that twerking is a divine raising of the Kundalini. And of course, audit your assumptions, check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you, Dr. Ogando.
Thank you,
Excellent
everybody.
job.